What's poppin'? Today is August 28th, as you can see down there, and today I have about 60 or so psychology, sociology cards to do, so we're just gonna get started. Hopefully this new system will work. Anyways, what is the path of the sound in the human ear? Well, the path of sound in the human ear starts in the outer ear. So the outer ear is it's called the pinna, which then goes to the pinna, which is the outer ear, then goes to the auditory canal, which then goes to the tympanic membrane, which is basically the eardrum. Yep. What is inattentional blindness? So this is when you're paying attention to something, you're focusing on something for a long time, such that you can't see something else that's in plain sight. See something in plain sight. Yep. Symptoms of alcohol withdrawal alleviated. I believe this is the fact that you can give them something called you can give them another depressant called a benzodiazepine. Cognitive economy principle just plainly states that our brain is very efficient. What type of memories are habits and where are they stored? So habits are implicit memory, which is they're procedural memory, which is a part of implicit memory, and they're stored in the basal ganglia. Vitreous chamber is just it provides pressure to the eyeball and nourishes the rods and cones. Is composed of vitreous humor. All right, 7 to 11 years for Piaget stages of cognitive development. This is called the concrete operational stage, not stable. Concrete operational stage, which states that children's are or they are able to conceive the idea of conservation, where if you take like a glass, for example, fill it with water and put it into like another glass that's like smaller but wider. Children are able to say, well, children at this stable operational stage will be able to say like, oh, they have the same amount of volume of water, whereas kids who are younger won't be able to think that way. They'll just be like, oh, the one that's shorter has less water than the one that's taller. And they're also able to reason mathematics at this stage, the concrete operational stage. Reason mathematics, and yep, cool. Organ of Corti, structure that contains the basilis membrane. Was it the bacillus membrane? I know it contains it might be the bacillus membrane. No, I think it's the basal membrane. Basal membrane, tectorial membrane, and hair cells. Basilar membrane, tectorial membrane, and hair cells. Close enough. How does a molecule bind to an olfactory sensory cell receptor and cause an action potential? So olfactory sensory cell receptors are GPCR receptors, so G protein coupled receptors. So when molecules bind to these GPCR receptors, a G protein is going to dissociate and bind to a G protein ion channel, which will cause positive ions to influx into the sensory cell, which will trigger an action potential, at least in the olfactory system. Mm-hmm. Let's try to aim for 100 today. That'd be nice. Sensory adaptation. Sensory adaptation. What is sensory adaptation? This might be the card that talked about how neurons can't fire for too long, because if neurons actually fire for too long, they eventually die out. So that might be sensory adaptation. Sensory adaptation, sensory adaptation, sensory adaptation. Yeah, so neurons die out because they can't fire for too long. I think I think the card says sensory adaptation is something we do with neurons, which we disable them after some period of time, because if we keep them firing, they'll eventually die off. Oh yeah, and this was a long card. Damn. Oh well. Change over time of a receptor to a constant. As you push down with your right hand, receptors will no longer fire. Actually, I kind of got that. Change over time too. The fact that, yeah, you don't want to keep your neurons on for too long, because if you keep them on for too long, they'll die out. So we have sensory adaptation to allow us to, if like this card said, if you put your hand down, the first few seconds you'll feel it, but then after a while you don't feel it because you don't want those neurons to keep firing. So I'm gonna put that as hard, mainly because my God, it's been a couple of months. I didn't understand it too well. Anyways, what is cognitive behavioral therapy and are skills learned in CBT short lasting or long lasting? They are very long lasting. Cognitive behavioral therapy is used for addicts, in which you teach them positive emotions, positive or coping mechanisms. Teach them how to control cravings and identify risky situations. Like if you go into a party and you're an alcohol addict, and the party is getting wild and drinking alcohol, you might not want to go to that party because you don't want to get influenced into drinking alcohol if you're trying to get off alcohol or something. Yep, positive thoughts, coping behavior, anticipate risky situations, monitor craving, and long lasting. Perfect. 9 hours of sleep. 9 hours of sleep goes to, I think it's like kids in school. 7 hours of sleep goes to adults. 10 hours of sleep goes to preschoolers, and 12 hours of sleep go to infants. Yes. Linguistic determinism is the idea that language dictates thought, and the two types are weak linguistic determinism, which is relativism, and strong linguistic determinism, which is the Whorfian hypothesis. Okay, post-acute withdrawal. Post-acute withdrawal are the psychological and behavioral effects from withdrawing from a drug, which is just not taking a drug after for some time. Post-acute happens after acute withdrawal, which is immediately after it. So this is about, I think it's like 2 weeks, 2 weeks after withdrawal. Yeah, second stage of withdrawal composed of psychological systems. Yeah, second stage. Okay, cool. I'll put it as hard though. What boundaries define each of the classes? Okay, so external outer ear is defined by the pinna to the tympanic membrane, which is the eardrum. The middle ear is composed of the middle ear. I think is composed of middle ear. I think its middle ear is composed of. My mnemonic is meso, so malleus to stapes, which make up the three ossicles. And inner ear is the semicircular canal and the cochlea. Now there's the stapes, pinna, the tympanic membrane, cochlea, and semicircular canals. Cool. Free recall is just what we're doing right now. It's just when you have a question, no cues, high cognition, hard to retrieve, no cues. Yeah. What sort of language? Okay, so 9 to 12 months is blabbing. 12 to 18 months is one word. 18 to 20 months is a jumble of words or just sentences with words that don't make sense. 2 to 3 years is 3-word sentence max, and 5 years is full-on language. Yep. Visual spatial sketchpad processes what it says, visual spatial information, and the phonological loop processes verbal and numbers into iconic and echoic components. Yep. Labeled line model of taste buds states that our taste receptors within our taste buds have 5 different receptors for the different tastants. So when tastants bind to the taste receptors in the taste buds, is will send neural signals to the gustatory taste cortex. Alright, so benzene, if it comes in through nose, it's going to bind to specific basal apical cell receptors, which are located in the olfactory epithelium, and they'll bind to them via GPCR, which will trigger action potentials and synapse on medial tufted cells, which are located in an area called the glomerulus. And so those will go up, and those will send signals, neural impulses, to the amygdala of the brain. Receptors, reaction potentials, to the brain. Cool. What happens when the oval window gets vibrated? It will shift fluid in around the cochlea, which will slide against hair cells to trigger action potential. What is a parvocellular? I think this is parvocellular. It's either temporal or spatial. I think it's temporal information, which is detected by rods. Yeah, by rods. Temporal information detected by rods. Other way. Detect spatial resolution, such as form and shape, and cones is the primary component. The other one is temporal information. Well, not temporal. I think it was like something else. I don't know. Alright, so parvocellular pathway, spatial resolution, form, shape, cones is the primary component. Basal forebrain. Basal forebrain. Structure located in the striatum, which contains the nuclear medial septonuclei, nuclear septilis, nuclear accumbens, and nuclear bacillus. Nuclear bacillus, nuclear accumbens, and medial septonuclei, all required for the create or secretion of acetylcholine, which is required for orienting attention. Yep, perfect. Hard still. Parallel processing is processing color, form, motion, or all information simultaneously. What is working memory? Working memory is just the thing you're thinking about right now. It's the thing you're thinking about right now. Yup. I'll put that as good. Long-term potentiation. This one's interesting. This one is that your brain doesn't create more neurons; it only strengthens connections in between neurons. And that's kind of like how you learn and how you grow as a person. Yep. Song response and post neuron. Okay, define each of the following. Morphology is the structure of the language, or structure of the words within the language. What is a five sensory adaptation? Vision, hearing, touch. Vision, hearing, touch. Vision, hearing, touch. So I'm going to smell. Vision, hearing, touch, taste, and proprioception. I think it's all of them except for smell. Oh, vision, hearing, touch, smell, proprioception. Which one is it missing? Vision, hearing, touch, vision, taste. It's missing taste. Taste. Okay, this one's the only thing missing is taste. How does each... Okay, so amphetamines will also increase dopamine activity and also inhibit dopamine reuptake in the brain. What happens during the N2 sleep stage? This is characterized by N2 sleep stage. Characterized by theta waves and contains sleep spindles or sleep spindles. Sleep spindles and like K fibers, I think. K complexes. Yeah, sleep spindle and K complexes. And so sleep spindles and K complexes all just help to keep you asleep. Yep. What is the amygdala involvement? So it's your aggression center, so involved in motion, sex, anger, thirst, all that stuff. And the temporal lobe, interestingly, is involved in memory consolidation and things like involved in memory consolidation and like thinking or something. Yeah, memory, decision making. Okay. For this hard. Just reach the following drug route. So injection is just, how can I say this? I think it's, I see. So okay, so injection is the fastest way. This is when you go through direct entry to your veins. Transdermal injection is injecting through like I think this was using a skin patch so that the drug diffuses through the skin. And intramuscular is like using an EpiPen in which you inject it directly into the thigh, which has the most access point to blood vessels. So it's pretty fast. So intramuscular is much more faster than transdermal, by the way. Drugs that work through the skin, yep, those work through the vein the fastest, and stuck through the muscle. Faster, so depending on delivery method. So I think that's versus vaccines. Okay. What is the role of the hippocampus in the limbic system? So hippocampus, not hypothalamus, is for converting short-term memory into long-term memory. Rate of light from the left visual hits the nasal side of the left eye and hits the temporal side of the right eye. Rate of light from the right visual field hits the nasal side of the right eye and hits the temporal side of the left eye. Experiment's theory of intelligence is that we only have one intelligence, which is also characterized or quantized by the G factor. Yep. What is tolerance? This is when you require a higher dosage of drug in order to produce the same drug effect within your body. What is universal theory of language? States that thoughts dictate language. Yeah. Negative priming and positive priming. So negative priming is when prime exposure to stimulus elicits a faster response to stimulus, while positive priming is prior exposure to some stimulus causes a fast response to another stimulus. Okay. Joint attention is when two people are paying attention to the same object at the same time. A lexicon is a list of vocab words within a language. There are 3 diazepines, short, intermediate. What types? Okay, so short and intermediate are used for, I think it's like to induce sleep, while long acting is used for anxiety. Okay, cool. I'll put it as hard. 5 monocular cues. Monocular cues. Color, form, no. Relative size, relative height, interposition, shading, contour, motion, parallax. Relative size, interposition, shading, contour, motion, parallax is still hard. Positive motions evoke more activity on the left side of the brain, which is your I think this will be your left if you're watching this. Yeah, so your left side of the brain. Negative motions evoke more activity on the right side of the brain. Dementia is when neurons die off over time, and this causes a decline in cognitive function, which interferes with daily life. Death of neurons can be attributed to something like a stroke, for example. Substance use disorder when there's an actual effect, negative effect from the usage of the drug itself, not the actual effect of the drug, the usage of the drug. Substance use. Which memory declines as you grow older? So memories decline. Episodic memory obviously declines. So remembering past events. Decline in processing speed. So you're slower in processing information. Decline in, I think it's decreased divided attention, or yeah, weaker levels of divided attention, and decline in prospective memory, which is thinking about stuff to do in the future, so like planning for new events. Mm-hmm. 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 Cool. Prefrontal cortex is involved for higher order thinking, so it's involved in like executive control, memory or decision making, memory control, or decision making, executive control, and how you behave in certain social situations. Cool. Johnson and Hayes proposed that the attenuator can be varied based on the task. So if a task requires higher level attention, you're able to tone down or increase the effects of the attenuator to decrease your attention on the ear that you're trying not to pay attention to. So it just varies from task to task and from individual to individual. Yep. Nicotine. Nicotine, I think it's like inhibits adenosine receptors, or no? Starts with an A. I think it's adenosine receptors. Acetylcholine. Acts on acetylcholine receptors. It's the wrong one. So what are the Hans cell general adaptation syndrome? general adaptation. Han-Sil general adaptation syndrome. I think this is the one that talks about the 3 stages of stress, which is the alarm phase, exhaustion, and no, alarm phase, resistance, and exhaustion. Yes, 3 phases. Yep. If an appraisal negative, second stage is secondary payable, which is how individual, in which individuals identify how to cope with a stressful situation, and they determine just how negative the stressful situation is. Mm-hmm. So the resistance phase is when we huddle or we flee, in which we also elevate our body temperature and secrete higher levels of cortisol. Okay. The parvocellular pathway, here we go. It detects spatial information, which uses mostly cones. Yeah, spatial resolution, form shape, cones, primary component. Okay. Biology for depression is something called anhedonia. Anhedonia. Yeah, anhedonia. I think it's anhedonia or anhedonia. Whatever it is, it's basically where you get where it stops responding to serotonin. Or is that something else? No, I think. Oh, wow, yeah. Okay, the other one, I got mixed up. Anterior cingulate is a biological region in which we respond and stop responding to serotonin. Okay. Posterior chamber. Posterior chamber contains the aqueous humor also and provides. I think it just contains the aqueous humor. I'm thinking something else to say. Area behind the iris filled with aqueous humor. Okay. Dissociation is when you forget the stressful situation or event. Sensitization is when you research to prevent the stressful event from happening in the first place. Safety behavior is when you rely on something to get you out of a stressful situation. Anxious avoidance is avoiding the stressful situation at all costs, while escaping is run away from your fucking problems. Yes, sweet. Avoiding stress at all costs. Yeah. Okay. Stress injury theory emotion. So it states that we have an event in which we develop a physiological response, and we interpret that physiological response in which allows us to determine emotion or elicit an emotional response. Yep. Event, physical response, identify label, and emotion. Cool. 3 ways to cope with stress. Cope, optimism, perceive control, social bonding. James Lang theory of motion states that, strictly speaking, physiological responses dictates emotion. So if you pick up a cat, your heart rate might go up, which is a physiological response, and your brain interprets heart rate going up as being happy, and it's black and white. It's totally that. Perception, interpret this increased heart rate as emotion. Cool. So remember, the 5 sensory adaptation is vision, hearing, touch, smell, proprioception, all of them except for taste. I think you can think of it as like taste not having or needing to be adapted. Salty food tastes like salty food. Spicy food tastes like spicy food. I guess, I don't know. Cool. Was a physiological component, cognitive behavioral effect of emotional experiences in this surprise birthday party. Okay. Physiologically, your skin temperature is going to go up. Your body temperature might go up. Heart rate might increase. Eyes might dilate, etc. Cognitive components might be it's all about how you interpret a birthday party as whether to it being a surprise or not. For example, maybe you had a birthday party and it was a negative experience, so you might think of this as a negative experience, while other people might think of it as a positive experience. And behavioral of an emotional response is where you show body language. So like you might shrivel up or something, I don't know. Or you might show facial expressions like surprise, like whoa, surprise birthday party. Muscle tense up, yeah, I mean same thing. Otherwise you're giving up body. Yeah, that's a big one. Cognitive experiences dictate how you interpret an emotional response. Someone who likes a party will enjoy their surprise birthday party. Okay. Han-Sil general adaptation. So exhaustion. So our body has a limited, this is when our body gets depleted amount of quote unquote Stress resource, which causes our tissues to get damaged, and it's because our body is not designed to withstand long periods of long-term stress. Yep. Cool. Nicotine will act on acetylcholine receptors. Biological reason for depression occurs at the anterior cingulate, which is part of the anterior part of the frontal cortex, which is in the front. And this is because the anterior cingulate doesn't respond anymore to serotonin, and serotonin is the drug that keeps you happy, so it tells you about satiation. From an event, so like you eat a lot of food, you might secrete serotonin, which tells you that you're happy. So you stop responding to serotonin, you don't get happy, which is part of the reason why you get depressed. Very basic, by the way. Finally, posterior chamber. This is the area that's behind the iris, and despite its name, it also contains aqueous humor. And that should be the last one. Cool. Oh, let's see how we did today. 104. Let's see review. These 5 cards, 25 minutes. All right, not bad. So with that said, I'll see you next time. Adios.